Call Eugenie Sage.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Pleased to take a short call on the New Zealand Horticulture Export Authority Amendment Bill. The Green Party is pleased to be supporting this bill, but when you look at the latest annual reports of the New Zealand Horticulture Export Authority, the previous 5 annual reports have highlighted the need to amend this Act to provide more flexibility in the sector and to appeal to a broader range of sector groups. So I wonder just what priorities the government has that they haven't moved faster to introduce this bill, given the much trumpeted objective in the business growth agenda to double primary sector exports by 2025 and to increase the ratio of exports to GDP to 40% by 2025. And especially when the changes that are in this bill are based on a review of the Act that started in 2010 and there has been wide consultation with the sector. So why the delays for nearly 6 years? I'd posit that it's due to the government being totally seduced by the dairy industry and the formerly high dairy payouts, by Fonterra's strategy of growing the milk supply by 2 to 3% annually, and its myth that there are no limits to growth, that they could continue to push for increased milk production by allowing the dairy industry to freeload on the environment through the weak rules the government has in relation to water pollution and land use and the exclusion of agriculture from the emissions trading scheme. So the government's preoccupation with dairy as the way to grow exports and the way to grow GDP has meant that it has neglected the horticultural sector and the need to better market our fruit and vegetables and nuts and the need to update this 30-year-old legislation. And the current Act, passed, as Damien O'Connor noted, in 1987 by the last Labor government, promotes the export marketing of horticultural products by providing a structure under which to have recognised quality standards and a structure to allow marketing to be coordinated through export marketing strategies and export licensing. And whether you're a grower, a packhouse operator or an exporter for particular products such as avocados, you can opt to work within the Act's framework through the Horticulture Export Authority, which licenses exporters and monitors compliance. So this, the Principal Act and the changes are important because they help to give growers some control and influence over exporter behaviour in order to protect the reputation of their products. And I note, Mr Speaker, that in 2012 only 15% of our fresh horticultural exports were done under the Principal Act, and as at September last year there were 76 export licences issued by the authority, and they were held by 54 different entities across the 9 different product groups like avocados, blackcurrants, boysenberries, buttercup squash, nashi pears, summer fruit and tamarillos, and they are only some of the fantastic fruit and vegetables that New Zealand produces that are suitable for export. And certainly, Mr Speaker, this is a growing sector, up by 12% in the year to June 2015, and a 25% increase in total export receipts and record earnings of nearly $300 million. So that's a major improvement on 2013-2014, when the high New Zealand dollar really hurt exporters. But we need a regime, and this bill helps to provide it, which allows and helps the growers, packhouse operators and exports to increase their market share, to develop new markets and to add value to their products and to coordinate their marketing. And the bill helps to do this by, for example, allowing an exemption from the licence requirements if there are exporters which have a joint venture for a year at least. They're exempt from getting a licence if they already hold a licence as individuals. And it's only making small changes to the Act, but it will provide more flexibility and clarifies some of the Act's current provisions, and it replaces the one-size-fits-all approach with a multi-tier system which provides for different requirements. It also significantly increases the fees, up from $4,000 to $10,000 for offences under the Act, and it means there'll be greater information sharing between the Horticulture Export Authority and Customs and MPI. But, Mr Speaker, the delay in introducing this bill is not the only example of the government failing to respond to the needs of the horticultural sector and failing to help it reach its potential. The Horticulture Export Authority has long called for country of origin labelling for fresh fruit and vegetables because it believes that this will help benefit quality production. And yet the national government has resolutely opposed this, and we don't have mandatory country of origin labelling. And that means that fruit and vegetables in local shops don't have to have any identification of where they come from. And we had the hepatitis A scare last December, which was associated with imported berries, but that hit local producers because there was no way of consumers knowing that they were buying local berries unless the company had chosen to label the products itself. So the Green Party will introduce mandatory country of origin labelling of fresh and single ingredient food so that consumers know how their food is produced, where it comes from, and what food they are choosing to buy and eat and feed their families. And Mr Speaker, in Australia, any food product must identify the country of origin of whatever makes up more than 50% of the total production cost of that product. Given the similarities between the markets, if we had the similar rules to Australia, it would simplify it a lot for both food manufacturers and exporters who are sending their products to both markets. And New Zealand is such a small market that it's often uneconomic for the large food manufacturing companies to change their labels just for us. So, Mr Speaker, this bill is a good one, but there is much more that the government could be doing to grow horticulture exports, to protect the reputation that we have when we market our primary production overseas by doing much more to ensure that we have clean water, because we cannot market summer fruit, boysenberries, avocados as coming from clean, green New Zealand unless we do much more to give integrity to that brand by protecting water quality and reducing our greenhouse gas emissions to ensure that we have a stable climate.
Richard